Hey guys, it's Christina here. Welcome back to the channel. I hope you're having the most amazing day ever. This here is my car office. So if you are a client of mine, you may see me working from here sometimes. And this is because this is my car office. So for those of you who don't know, my family and I are traveling Australia. We have 7 children and we're living in tents as we travel around and explore this beautiful country, which means sometimes I don't have an amazing outdoors. Today there's an amazing outdoors, but it is sunny and hot, and I don't have that much power on my phone, so I wanted to make sure that I was near a power supply. Now, today's question that I kind of wanted to answer was asked by one of my beautiful friends, because I have a thought process, doesn't necessarily mean it's true, it's just a process, a thought process that there's certainly some people who are watching me in my journey and are kind of like, she's lost the plot. She's completely lost the plot. She's off a rocker, she's lost the plot. What, she's doing some crazy, weird fad diet, that's what it gets called, and she's lost the plot and she's off a rocker. And the other thing is that there's some people that are watching that I know are just kind of like waiting for me to have a heart attack. Like they're just waiting for the heart attack to come and just kind of sitting in the background waiting for that to happen. What else? There's a whole bunch of different people that are watching for all sorts of different reasons, some of which are watching because they want to see if this is actually sustainable, if it's something that's going to get me past the next, bulk of kilos that I want to get down. They want to see how that works for me and whether they could implement that for themselves. There's people that are watching from that curiosity perspective and need time to think about it and all of that type of stuff and adjust and see how it would work in their family before they like really launched and played with it. So there are people that are watching for educational purposes, that are learning like little tidbits here and there, that are engaging in my content for that reason. There are people that like love and care for me and are watching from that perspective because they want to see that I'm doing well and all of the things. So there are people watching for all sorts of different reasons. But I'm certainly aware that there are people that are watching because they are kind of secretly hoping that I fail, and they're waiting for me to fall off the bandwagon, or they're waiting for me to die of the heart attack, all of the things. And they kind of sometimes make their presence known and sometimes not. So with that, I was having this conversation with my beautiful friend and sharing about that. And in that conversation, she asked this amazing question, which was, do I think that the carnivore diet is for everyone, forever, always, and amen? And the answer to that question is yes, but in the sense that with everything, whatever it is, no matter what protocol I use. So this morning I had a client who has got some arthritis issues. She's got some other, rheumatoid issues that are going on. Lots of conditions that are going on with her immune system and with her bones. And so from that perspective, I gave that individual some pathways. So, I said carnivore diet is definitely a pathway. The GAPS diet is another pathway that you could go on. And another pathway is we start by elimination. So we start by hair testing to work out what are problematic foods for you that need to start coming out so that your body has more room to be able to deal with all of the inflammation that's got at the moment, to be able to start to nourish itself and to do some of the cellular repair that you actually need to take place, and start from there and see how you go. Now, just like she can choose her own adventure in those pathways, the same is true when it comes to carnivore, that there is pathways within carnivore, and it depends on where you have been, what your health has been like prior to starting it, and what your health has, and how long, for example, how long have you been unwell, how long have you had those things. But the other aspect is the mental health as well. So how your brain is set up. So for example, really clearly, I know that I have a sugar addict. I am addiction. I am definitely a sugar addict. Excuse me. And, having some pavlova at Christmas really taught me that. It really brought home to me how much of a sugar addict I am, but I didn't realize it. Like, I knew I liked sugar and I didn't necessarily eat that much sugar. I actually ate it from things like potatoes and bread and and those types of non-traditional ways that are sugar, but we don't think about them as sugar. And so the carbs, essentially. And I would pair them with fats all of the time because I'm really, really attracted to the fats. And so during Christmas, I realized how much of a control that actually has over me. And so that was a real eye-opener for me when it came to understanding that I actually am a sugar addict. So I have two things going on. One of which is my blood glucose was super duper high. So it was 21.1. And that was some fasting blood glucose, right? I should have been in the hospital. So my blood glucose is really, really high. And right now what's happening is my body is consuming the bank of Christina. So all of that excess glycogen that's stored in my liver, around my liver, which is also known as fatty liver, is slowly but surely being used up because I'm not putting sugar in. So the sugar that's in my body is actually starting to be used up as a fuel source. And eventually, as I get through that, what's going to happen is I'll move into ketosis, good and solidly and properly, and my body will be that fat burner that I want it to be, and we'll move on from there. So that's still happening for me. That process is still happening for me because I've got quite a bit of it. For somebody else, that might not happen for as long, and it might not need to go on as long as it does for me. Now, so that's one aspect, which is why I personally would not include fruit for myself, and or fruit like vegetables. Now, the other aspect is the sugar addiction aspect. And I saw a beautiful quote the other day, which is, would you want to trade an ice cream cone for a leg? Would you want to trade an ice cream for a leg? And essentially, that's kind of what a lot of people are doing every day. If you've got diabetes or you're on that pathway of insulin resistance and you're continuing to eat things like, the ice cream and look, you can make carnivore ice cream, right, guys? You can make carnivore ice cream. But if you're continuing to eat the things that, are not going to be great for you from that diabetic perspective, then you're essentially trading your leg for that food. For those things, for those food-like items, you're trading your leg for them. And you're trading your physical health and wellness for them. And that was a really good thing for me to actually see, because it helped to remind me, yes, actually, I don't want to trade my physical body for those things. I don't want that to take place. I don't want to give up health and vitality for food. And so, thanks, Ben. He had to shut it extra loud. But I don't want to give up those things for the sake of something that's going to taste nice on the lips but forever on the hips, or whatever else people say. And so when I ask the question about whether carnivore is forever and a day, my answer to that question is actually multifaceted. Now, it depends on the person, depends on where they've come from, depends on all those things. Now, for some people, I think the forever and a day is 70% meat and protein, and fat and protein, and then maybe 30% of your other stuff. 30% of the fruits and fruit-like vegetables. So vegetables that are essentially fruits, like an avocado is a fruit, but it's a vegetable. Pumpkin is a fruit, but it's also a vegetable. So things that have got seeds in it, which is the fruit of the actual plant versus the stem, the root, or the leaves. And so that's actually what I think is the healthiest version for everyone forever and a day. The proper human diet, some people would call it. Dr. Ken Berry calls it the proper human diet. Now, that's what I think is the more expanded version. Now, not everybody can do that. So for some people, they can do raw milk, they can do raw honey, and they can do fruits and fruit-like vegetables. But that's not the case for everybody. And for a lot of those people that can handle those, they actually have high metabolisms and they do a lot of exercise. So we see Saladino, Dr. Saladino does that. He's got honey, he's got kefir. I think he might do raw milk as well, I'm not sure. And the fruit and so on. But he has a really extensive exercise program in the sense that he's surfing for 3 hours of the day, and then he's doing a workout and lifting weights and doing all of those types of things. That's not the case for the majority of us. Majority of us don't live lives that are like that. Now, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't, or that we shouldn't aspire to, or start to bring more exercise into our life, because we definitely should. But majority of us are not using our bodies to the extent that someone who's got a high intensity extended physical life actually is. And so therefore, if we're not using those carbohydrates that are coming from those fruits and the honey and so on, then we're going to be turning them into fat, and we're going to be storing them, and they're going to start to create metabolic health issues. And so for majority of people, that's not going to be the optimal unless they start to really up the physical output. And when it comes to putting out physical output, my thoughts are that ideally what we want to be doing is actually doing exercise that makes us smile. Because from what I see in my clinic, most women are adrenally depleted, in the sense that their adrenals are just so exhausted and tired, and their hormones are really out of balance. And so anytime they do exercise that's strenuous, that they can't smile because they enjoy it, it's fun, anytime they've got to push themselves through it, they're actually working counterintuitively to how their body functions, because they're actually stressing themselves even more. And it's not a good stress, it's a negative stress, because their system is already overstressed. Just beep the horn. But their system is already overstressed. And so that then keeps that weight on for them. So it makes it harder for their body to lose weight because they're stressed and they're adding more stress to it. And they're not balancing their hormones, and they're not nourishing and feeding those hormones. And so for me, the proviso with my clients is they're like, oh, should I do this class? I'm like, here's the thing. If you get to a point where you're not enjoying it anymore, and you're not smiling through it, and you're like gritting your teeth to try and get through it, at this point with your adrenals the way they are, you need to stop. But if you can smile, if you can enjoy it, you can push yourself a little bit, but not too much while your adrenals are thoroughly depleted. When your adrenals start to balance and you're feeling healthy and well and you've got energy and all of that type of stuff, then do more, push more, do those things. But in those early days where your adrenals are not balanced, don't push more, because they're tired and depleted. And it's like kicking a horse while it's down. You want to allow it to be nourished and lifted up before you actually do that. So again, coming back to that question of like, do I think this is a diet for everyone, forever and amen? I think it depends on the individual, and there's adjustments that need to be made. So again, for me, at this point in time, fruit is not going to be beneficial for me. And the fruit-like vegetables are not beneficial for me from the perspective of, one, it's going to push my blood glucose up a little bit, which means it's going to make it slower for me to lose weight. Now, if my weight loss is slower and my results are slower, then that sometimes makes it more challenging to keep going, because we don't see the results as quickly, and the motivation to keep going starts to waver and starts to change and move. And so we want to keep motivation up as high as we possibly can to support the continuation of that healing. Now, the other aspect of that is that sometimes it's a mental game. So those fruits and vegetables, for me, would mentally take me down that pathway of starting to fall off the wagon, in the sense of, I'll just have a little bit. I'll just have a little bit, and I'll just have a little bit more, and I'll just have a little bit more, and so on. The other aspect of that is, if I'm consuming, say, avocado, which has got lots of good fats in it from, the perspective of fats in avocados, the fat in an avocado is not the same as fat in an animal. Now, the fat in the avocado has other benefits, but it is not the fat that's going to help to heal the hormones. Animal fats are the fats that are going to help to heal and rebalance the hormones. And so if I'm eating the avocado, which can be delicious and yummy and all of the stuff, it's taking up space from when I could be eating the beef fat, the tallow, the butter, the lard, that can be healing my hormones. And so I'm slowing down my hormone healing progress by actually consuming that. Now, for some people, the little bit of avocado is actually going to help them keep going. It's going to make life more enjoyable, it's going to make life more comfortable, and it's going to help them keep going. For me, it's going to slow down my progress, which would make it harder for me to keep going, simply because it's harder to do something when you're not seeing results. And the faster you see the results, often the easier it is to keep motivation up. So that is one of those aspects. Now, when it comes to the fruit, I may get to a point where my blood sugar is regulated, my weight is regulated, my health is nice and well, and I'm feeling great. And I've reached all of my goals with carnivore. And I might get to the point where that's happened, and then I could potentially bring fruit in and see how I go with it. Now, my body might be able to cope with that, but the question is, will my mindset be able to with the sugar addiction? And that's the other thing, is that roller coaster of, if I have a little bit of something, does it stay a little bit of something, or does it turn into a lot of something else? Like a little bit of strawberries, which is delicious, by the way, turning into, oh, I just have a bit of cake, or I'll just have a biscuit, or I'll just have this, or I'll just have that. And then suddenly I've traded my health for those foods. Now, I, at this stage, am certainly not a manager. I've not in my life been somebody who's like a moderator and able to moderate things. Like, it's just not been me. I'm all in or all out type of person, and I struggle with the moderation. Other people are moderators and they can do it great. The other aspect is that sugar addiction aspect. And so for me, I'm really mindful that when I get to that place, I'm going to have to see how I think and feel, because I don't want to get to the place where I compromise my health to have some fruit, to have some fruit vegetables. I don't want to do that. And so it will just depend on how my physiology goes with it, but then also, how does my mindset go with it? Am I in a good place where I can moderate and I can make sure that I'm really got my fats nice and high, and I'm just having a little bit of, fruit and vegetables here and there to manage that? I don't know the answer to that question yet for me. I will find out that answer when I get there. But for some people, they can absolutely bring in those fruits and vegetables. For other people, they can't, because A, physiology, but B, it can be that mindset stuff that's going on. So that's my thought about carnivore forever and a day, is that it's really dependent. I don't think that there is one, like, I don't think we all need to be doing the lion's diet forever and a day. I think that we can bring in some fruit and vegetables. I think the level of which we can bring those in is different per person. And I think that it depends on exercise. I think it depends on metabolic rate. I think it depends on our history prior to coming to this. I think it depends on what our current health is like and what's going to serve us best in that moment in time, as to whether we bring in things like fruit and vegetables and honey. And when I say vegetables, I'm really just meaning those fruit-like vegetables, ones that have seeds in them, because the plant toxins are lower in those. But my overall answer to the question is yes. But everything always needs tweaking. So it's just like when I'm working as a GAPS practitioner, and I still work as a GAPS practitioner, and essentially carnivore is just a plant-free version of GAPS. Like, that's what it is essentially. It's just got an extra element component to it, where maybe you can add in a few more foods that then you can do with GAPS. And the other component would be, like, there is a keto style version of GAPS as well. So they all still fall under the GAPS umbrella. It's just slightly different. But from that perspective of a GAPS practitioner, when I'm working with someone, I always have to adjust their diet. So there is no step 1, steps 2, step 3. There is a basic overview, but some people can do chicken eggs and some people can't. Some people need duck eggs. Some people can't do any eggs at all. Some people need goats or sheep's dairy versus cow dairy, but other people can do the cow's dairy. Some people need to, like, really be mindful of how much nuts that they have. And I really don't think a lot of people should be eating nuts, because we eat way too many of them, especially if you are paleo, or if you are GAPS or whatever, where any place where you've taken out grains, for example, and you start to make baked goods and you're replacing the grain and the wheat with nuts, that's going to be problematic. And so from that perspective, I see people eating way too much of them. And so maybe fairly minimally you could have them activated, etc. But I don't think they're a lifelong should eat lots of. Like, here's the thoughts with nuts. If you're going to eat nuts, not that I'm recommending you do, but from the GAPS perspective, if you're going to eat nuts, the goal is not to eat more nuts than you would crack. Like, if you had to physically do everything that was required for you to eat those nuts, how many would you actually eat? When it came to harvesting them from the tree, cracking them, and then eating them, how many would you actually eat? And the majority is most people wouldn't eat more than a handful at a time, because it's hard work. You've got to do a lot of work for them, which indicates the more work you have to do for the thing, the less often you should probably be eating it, in regards to the energy exchange that you're going to get. Like a nut is quite small, and you could have to do hours of work to actually get enough for an actual meal. And yeah, it's not that nutritious to the point that it's worth hours of energy to be able to access that small nut, unless you're starving and dying. Completely different situation. You eat whatever you need to eat. If you're starving and in the point of like, you know, there's nothing to eat, and if I don't eat, I'm going to die, you eat what you need to eat in that moment in time. But in the world that we live in, we've got a lot more nutrition available to us. I think we have to be a little bit smarter about it. And that is where I think carnivore or ketovore or hypercarnivore are actually the long-term proper human diets, with some tweaking and some adjusting and some changing for the individual, as always. It should be, as always. All right, so there's my answer to that question. I hope you have the most amazing day ever. I would love to hear your thoughts below. And if you have any other questions that you would like to ask, I look forward to hearing them. All right, bye for now. Have the most amazing day ever, and I will talk to you soon. See ya.